and actions make him a person of interest to DSS presidency area.
Nigeria to pursue climate change resilience strategies at United Nations Framework Convention in Madrid.
World heavyweight boxing champion Anthony Joshua gets thumbs up from President Buhari.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the new National Security Strategy document.
President Muhammadu Buhari on Wednesday last week, that's on the 4th of December 2019, unveiled the 2019 National Security Strategy, which is a new roadmap to tackle security challenges in the country.
Now, while unveiling the latest National Security Strategy document, the President said its main objective is to achieve a safer and more secure nation. And the new security roadmap was a product of elaborate discussions and input from all agencies that constitute Nigeria's security architecture.
Well, it is not surprising, Kingsley, that Nigeria has charted a roadmap on security because the nature of security challenges facing the country at present is more complex and than it has been in the past. Sure. And the key point on this include kidnapping, banditry, insurgency, farmer pastoralist clashes. You can also add cyber crimes, one chance, and so on.
Of course, Kirian, they say that when the drum beats change, the dance steps too will have to change. And so the current National Security Strategy Document 2019, we are told, is a 5-year update of the 2014 maiden edition. And this time around, it's been tailored to address the security issues that you have just raised, especially emerging domestic and international threats to Nigeria's national security.
Now, a cursory glance at the document reveals that the National Security Strategy aims to address 4 fundamental security concerns. First, protecting Nigerian people and territory, promoting Nigeria's prosperity and sustainable development, promoting national unity and peaceful coexistence, and juxtaposing Nigeria's interests with other regional and international interests.
Kieran, of course, will be drilling further into the strategy document to ascertain just how robust the strategies are and to what extent they are tailored to tackle the current security challenges, and more importantly, the extent to which technology might be deployed to address the issues that we have already itemized, and in particular, what might be done differently from what had obtained in the past. Those questions and issues will engage our guests in our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today as we discuss the latest National Security Strategy document. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to the program. As always, we're broadcasting live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're right here at the Abuja headquarters studios, carry out a bright Monday morning.
Exactly.
And nice weekend for Nigeria with Anthony Joshua reclaiming his heavyweight crowns.
Of course, he made out there on that very occasion. All right, I am Kieran Umai, also thanking you for joining us for a fresh edition of Good Morning Nigeria this Monday. And just to let you know, we shall as well serve you our usual complimentary segments, which will include newspaper review, business polls, and others. Now, Nolene Abel Ame is our guide on the morning news. Hello, Nolene.
Hi, Kieran. Good morning to you and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. The presidency has responded to some of the insinuations in the media about the arrest by the Department of State Services, DSS, of the agitator Omoyele Sowore. A statement by Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, says the DSS does not necessarily need the permission of the presidency in all cases to carry out its essential responsibilities that are laid down in the Nigerian Constitution, which was the foundation for the restoration of democracy in 1999. According to the presidency, it should not surprise anyone who has followed his actions and words that Sowore is a person of interest to the DSS following his call for a revolution to overthrow the democratically elected government of Nigeria. The presidency also notes that Nigeria is already dealing with an insurgency that has left millions of people displaced and desperate in the northeastern region of the country, and therefore does not need another spate of lawlessness and loss of lives, all in the name of a revolution. Meanwhile, the All Progressives Congress said presidency's claim that the Department of State Services does not necessarily need the president's permission in all cases to carry out its essential and constitutional responsibilities is to enable Nigerians, particularly the opposition, to have clear understanding of the nation's law concerning the convener of revolution now, Sowore. The APC, in a statement by its National Publicity Secretary Lanre Issa Onilu, rejects the inciting messages and criminal antics of some individuals and partisans who have embarked on a campaign of calumny against the present administration and are calling for a forceful takeover of government. The party is calling on Nigerians to look at the issue of Sowore's arrest and subsequent trial dispassionately and devoid of the skewed narratives and sentiments being propagated by the opposition. The APC says the nation's law are clear on treason and Nigerians would expect decisive actions from the law enforcement agencies and government. As any attempt to truncate democracy and threaten the collective peace and safety must and will be resisted using the full weight and instrumentalities of the law. More Nigerian youth are becoming active participants in the fight against corruption, having seen its negative impact in the social and economic development of the country. This was at the Michelle's Youth Say No to Corruption campaign in Abuja.
If you say no to corruption, and you say no to corruption, and you say no to corruption, corruption will be no. So it's about all of us coming in together to say no.
The moment your conduct, your actions, or your inactions affects in your own dishonesty, affects your next neighbor, you are corrupt.
Minister of Environment Mohammed Mahmoud has tasked Nigeria delegates to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Spain, Madrid, to explore possible means of building climate change resilience in Nigeria. Meeting with the delegates, the minister reminded them of the federal government's commitment to ensuring that Nigeria meets up her nationally determined contributions with the time frame agreed at the Paris Conference of 2015.
Not only we have prepared the environment, but increase the livelihood of the people. And this is something that we can't let up. We'll only have to continue to push forward, to give our best, and best again and again.
And still talking environment, recent findings by the United Nations Environment Programme indicates that the world's ecosystems are being threatened by plastics littering the environment, negatively affecting plant, animal and human life. To address the environmental concern, a group of youth is partnering with the German embassy to promote a reduction in the use of plastic containers by Nigerians.
In May of this year, the House of Rep passed a bill called the Plastic Bag Prohibition Bill, and up till now we don't know the state as it is. We cannot keep waiting on government. We have to start doing something because a lot of plastic is causing a lot of problems in our waterways, the air we drink.
President Muhammadu Buhari thumbs up world heavyweight boxing champion Anthony Joshua for regaining his belt Saturday night in a rematch with Mexican Andy Ruiz Jr. The president, in a statement, rejoices with Joshua, saluting him for bringing joy to millions of Nigerians at home and in the diaspora who had rooted for him to regain the titles he lost about 6 months ago. President Buhari wishes Anthony Joshua well as he seeks to bring more glory to Nigeria and to the boxing profession. And those are the news highlights for now. The program continues with Kieran and Kinsley after this break. I'm Nolin Ebel Ame. Good morning.
Nestle, good food, good life. Now, download the
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. Igniting smiles across Africa and beyond. Kogi Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in the quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnerships with the largest TV network in Africa, the NTA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Studio 24, Delta Airlines, Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogiafrica.tv. Kogi Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage, travel and tourism.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin.
Eh?
You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad, or even end up in prison.
My name is Balaunti. I'm the Managing Director of Petroleum Product Marketing Company, a subsidiary of NNPC. There are significant price discrepancy between Nigeria and its neighbors across Africa. There's a discrepancy of between 150 to 250 naira. That creates an incentive for arbitrage by smuggling triumph, by taking petroleum products across the neighbors so that they can be sold at a higher price. While the smugglers are making the money, Nigeria is paying for it. And that payment is destroying everything that we do in terms of planning, in terms of our ability to fund, and thereby taking money that is meant for development. The introduction of this Operation White will have a reduction of close to 6 million liters on a daily basis, which if you take an average of 150, translate a saving of over 1 billion naira every day. That is the benefit of Operation White, and we have started seeing the great benefit.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. On business news, here is our correspondent, Abdulkarim Zurmi.
In its efforts to build the capacity of operators of micro, small and medium enterprises, the Abuja Enterprise Agency has trained some young Nigerians in different skills ranging from carpentry to shoemaking and other forms of skills to bridge the unemployment gap in the country and ensure the growth of smaller businesses both within and outside Abuja.
Training also covered entrepreneurial skills to improve the business acumen of these participants. Thus, participants are better prepared to make a profitable venture from the skills they have learned.
The participants were presented with starter packs to enable them start and become employers of labor in the not-so-distant future. Now let's head to the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange to see how the market fared for the week ended Friday, 6th December 2019. With business news, Abdul Karim Zermi.
Thank you, Abdul Karim, for that business package. And up ahead is newspaper review.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebe, is right here with us in the studios for today's edition of the program. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kiri.
We had a pleasant weekend.
You're welcome.
Lively one with Joshua winning.
Yes. As a matter of fact, as I said earlier, he made a day on that occasion.
Yes.
Right, because
two-time world champion.
Exactly, and Roos was actually shocked by what he saw on
it's a payback time.
Exactly.
Joshua the other time.
Exactly. All right, now.
Well, I mean, he didn't. Anthony Joshua didn't shock him. He was the one who shocked Anthony Joshua 6 months ago when they first met in New York. But take nothing away from Andy Ruiz Jr. You can see his explosions, particularly in the 8th round. Would indicate that if you fought him on the inside and didn't take advantage of your reach, it might have been a different result. So it's not the typical heavyweight boxer, not in terms of physique. I mean, some persons might see him without meaning any disrespect.
He boasted that he was going to take him out, for it in the 8th round. And he also said that, look, he was not going to reveal his secret because that he understood Joshua well. He knew what to do, and he tried to do that because he was chasing him around.
That's right. That's right. And then Joshua, of course, had to stink, and then, of course, fly away like a butterfly. Sting like a bee, and then fly away like a butterfly in the mold of Muhammad Ali. But the point to also note is he's been given excuses on the road. Oh, he was partying. At some point, he also said, look, he had to gain a lot of weight, to be able to frustrate Anthony Joshua. But again, as I said, without meaning any disrespect to Andy Ruiz Jr., we wonder whether he's a sumo wrestler or whether indeed he's a boxer.
A combination of the two.
Joshua lost a lot of weight. I don't know whether it was deliberate or something because, it was 20 pounds difference.
It was at his fittest. It was at his fittest.
It was deliberate. He had a lot of expert advice, including the former champion of Velasco, the Russian, the Russian man he defeated.
Klitschko.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, Anthony Joshua had beaten Klitschko.
Yes, but
defeated him.
One of those who helped provide serious advice in his corner.
Exactly.
Yes,
all right, and of course, one of the
viewers should just be wondering whether we are boxers.
No. What's interesting here is that Joshua took his mother to the ringside, so meaning that he wanted that motherly strength that really came.
I'm sure you have also heard the story that before this fight he visited the Jebo there on Shagamu areas.
All right,
congratulations to him.
Yes,
big one.
Now let's talk to newspaper review. Leadership newspaper. Let's start with that. Well, let's go to the lead story. Communities groan in darkness despite multi-billion naira project with a rider 80.6 billion naira budgeted projects in 4 years. That story is on page 4. It's actually about rural electrification. You can find out the details on page 4. And now at the bottom of leadership newspaper we have Rivers. Robert Kiri residents deny forceful eviction. That's on page 48. Federal government plans new visa regime to boost economy. On page 43 is where you get that story. And now local government polls. APC clears AKT, PDP sweeps Adamawa. That's on page 49. And Shore, DSS doesn't need permission to make arrests, says the presidency. That's on page 5.
Okay, I will take a look at the Blueprint newspaper. Blueprint, you have an earpiece there beside the nameplate. It says, capital market key to bridging infrastructure gap. And that's attributed to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Below that, Showore's rearrest. Nigerians deserve peace. And that's according to the presidency. With the rider says no government will allow calls to stabilize democracy. World Soil Day, 6% of Nigeria's land degraded. That's attributed to experts, with details at page 38. Ogun police arrest header for killing farmer, page 13. Late story, please don't reopen borders. Refund begs federal government. It goes against closure, not true Nigerians. We can meet right demands at Christmas, according to Miller. Customers thumbs down local commodity rebagging. Details on page 6. Now, below the photograph, you have, of course, the story. It says, Joshua versus Reunion. AJ's victory, joy, and relief to Nigerians. That's according to President Buhari. Details on page 6. Oshibajo off to UAE, speaks at his forum Monday. New marriage law anti-Christian. PMN tells federal government. 39,000 lecturers enrolled in IPPIS. FG promoting fake news. That's according to us. Details on page 5. Lagos Yahoo teen sex unfaithful girlfriend blaze. The teen is 19 years, the girlfriend 24 years.
His elder sister.
No, that would be incest. But I think they just, they were in a relationship. The 19-year-old alleged to be a Yahoo boy, and the victim of his fury, 24-year-old.
Well, the key story of the day is that Omoy Yelesuwo has been arrested. The Department of State Services, in the statement by spokesman Peter Afuna, clarified that Sowore resorted to acts inimical to security shortly after being released from custody. He is facing trial for alleged resorting to calling for violence and forceful takeover of government. And the suspect and also suspected for transnational illegal activities. His supporters condemned the alleged desecration of the Temple of Justice, but the DSS says none of his operatives were involved in the drama or the scuffle that happened at the court. A video of the scuffle in court over alleged attempt to arrest Sowore in court has been published on social and conventional media. The counsel to Sowore had raised in court suspicion that his client could be arrested outside the court. Sowore was released on bail and is currently after the 24-hour ultimatum by the judge. But meanwhile, DSS says that its operatives were not part of the scuffle, and it clarified that it took Mr. Sowore at the gate of the court in the vehicle of his defense counsel, adding that its operatives were not part of the drama. But the spokesperson, counsel for Sowore, has actually put a lie to what the DSS says. He says that they were actually summoned to the chamber of the judge, and the representative of the DSS had actually apologized for what happened in court. But if we are to go by the incidences, second arrest is not unusual. If you follow the history of second arrest, you will recall that Colonel Sambo Dasuki was first charged in court. At the first instance, he was granted bail. Then the second charge was brought, which he has been held up to now. Similarly, Sheikh Ibrahim El Zakzaki was arrested, and he brought a fundamental right enforcement case, and he was released. He was rearrested for murder of a soldier and disruption of public peace in Zaria, for which he's been held today. So usually that is the strategy. But the spokesperson of the president, Garba Shehu, says that the DSS does not need any permission from the president before they carry out their duty. And therefore, anybody who has followed the activities of Mr. Sowore is aware of the fact that he had called for mass disobedience and civil unrest to overthrow an elected government. And therefore, the fact that he's now a guest of the DSS should not be surprise to anybody.
Well, I think the greater furor over the Sowore issue had to do with the locus of his rearrest. You know, there were a number of video clips that circulated on social media claiming that the officials of the DSS stormed the courtroom and then effected his arrests, and that of course the judge had to hurriedly adjourn and other court officials scampered for safety. The DSS issued their own statement, you know, rebutting all of that and drawing attention to what precisely happened, that none of the officials were inside the courtroom. Of course, if they did that, that would be a violation of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, plus the fact that it would also be contemptuous of the court. But you still have, you know, a lot of counter arguments from the counsel to Sowore, saying that when the DSS apologized to the presiding judge for invading the courtroom and all of that, but the DSS statement says that, look, he wasn't arrested inside the courtroom, that the counsel had raised the specter of Sowore's possible rearrest, but that was addressed by the judge. And then the proceedings went ahead. And then, of course, the court later adjourned, and that Sowore was rearrested outside of the courtroom. I think that this is particularly very significant. I mean, whatever the facts are and how we respond to them, because it will be a desecration, you know, of the court premises.
And
for a person to be arrested.
the worrying part is that the version also put out by DSS is that thugs invaded the court, and when Sowore was being led out of the court for fear of being arrested, he returned back into the court, and it was the thugs that created that scene, and his operatives were not part of it. If that is the truth, then that is serious. Who is desecrating the court? Is it the DSS operatives or the thugs that were brought in there? We have to be very careful in putting blame, because when situations like this arise, you never can be sure who is actually telling the truth and the whole truth.
But the pictures are the actualities of what happened there. The videos circulating in the social media. If operatives of DSS were found in that picture, they can be identified. They can be identified in the real sense of it. Because when I saw that, I was trying to identify because by way of their uniforms. You know, there are uniformed men in all the scenes that are were circulated in the social media. Well,
there's been no positive identification of any DSS official in those videos so far, because you had a lot of commentaries running on that particular incident. Kira.
All right. More.
Yes, IPPIS. So far, the Office of the Accountant, the Minister of Finance and National Planning had indicated that 39,000 lecturers have registered for IPs. However, the spokesperson for the chairman of the University of Ibadan has denied that there is a difference between university workers and university lecturers. And he has said that 90% of their members were very loyal and did not participate in it. But meanwhile, he has also condemned what the Executive Secretary of Nigeria Universities Commission claimed that 100 fake professors have been discovered. And he denies that that is not true. But the Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission, while addressing the Vice Chancellors, had published in his November edition of the bulletin that they asked professors to update the data on his website. And 100 fake professors also updated their data, and they have sent those data to universities for clarification. Meanwhile, a committee of vice chancellors has called for extension for registration for the IPPIS, which was expected to have ended last Saturday.
So which one is the true position now? The ASU is saying that people are not registering.
90% of its members apparently did that. Some members, maybe 10%, had registered. There is indication that 39,000 lecturers had registered, and ASU spokesperson from Ibadan is putting a light on that.
Yeah, I just, Kira, I'm sorry, let's back up a bit on the Sowore story. if you recall, the part of the statement that was issued also indicated that, okay, Showore and Olawale Bakare were first arrested and then charged. Then they were released on bail. And that in this instance, it is only Showore who has been rearrested, and that Olawale Bakare has not been rearrested.
Yes, the SS were categorical.
Yeah, I think that's a significant statement.
Yes, it was categorical that he is not with them and they don't know his whereabouts.
Well, it's supposed to be restricted to Oshobo, I believe. That's part of the condition. Yes.
All right, so let's turn to the editorial for today, taken from Daily Trust newspaper. Sell the refineries. In the continuing efforts to revive the nation's 4 refineries in Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna, the federal government signed a memorandum of understanding with China, India, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. No doubt this move was informed by lack of progress in all previous efforts to make the refineries to work. Bye.
Well, there has been an argument about selling refineries. And when you sell refineries, you'll be selling them undervalue or a depreciated rate, and whoever is going to buy it is going to refurbish the refinery and get it functioning. But we are supposed to have had 5 refineries and they are not functioning well, and the initiative about not selling them has gone very far. You recall during the president's visit to Japan, he had an agreement for the refineries to be revitalized. Kaduna Refinery and Petrochemical was built by a Japanese company, and therefore that agreement is in line. During the president's visit to Saudi Arabia, he also get an arrangement for support to revive one of our refineries. Similarly, when the president went to Russia, there was an arrangement again to help Ajaokuta Steel, as well as what Gazprom supporting and also reviving some of our refineries. So there have been international initiatives to help revive our refineries rather than sell them off. Because when you sell them off, you have to sell them at depreciated value. And how do you fill the void of the 4.5 million liters of petrol that is required to run this country?
What is even worrisome about the idea of selling the refineries is the fact that when you sell the refineries, the buyers will come and resuscitate the refineries, right? Which means it is possible to do that. So for many Nigerians, selling it off entirely, should not be the right approach, if you ask me as well, because the gains that Nigeria are going to get by reviving them and making them functional at least 100% capacity, and then we'll be having all these issues of not fuel locally in Nigeria.
We sold Ajaokuta, went into partnership. It's not functioning. You remember our aluminium smelting company? It was sold. What is the status now? And so our experience would sell public property with the hope that government is not a good manager of public enterprise, but the private sector has been of any wonderful experience. And that is why the initiative, this time around, all the initiative is government to government for the sophistication of refinery. That is why there's brighter hope on that. As far as I am concerned, from that perspective, there's higher hope than selling them to individuals, private entrepreneurs, for which we have to hold a pinch of salt because it's a commercial entity.
And when they say that government has no business in business, that climbs. I think government has business in business. That is why
it is one thing to resuscitate the refineries. It's another thing to have the refineries as a going concern. Get them working optimally as they ought to be. We have had terms. What has happened? Terms standing for turnaround maintenance. So you do your turnaround maintenance, a few years down the line, the refineries pack up. 12 years ago, when President Olusegun Obasanjo was leaving office, one of the Port Harcourt refineries was concessioned or otherwise sold to Dangote. There was a lot of hue and cry. Then President Umaro Yar'Adua came and he revoked that. That's what then persuaded Dangote to go to Lagos, start building its own refinery, which is, of course, ongoing. But what is the state of the refineries? 12 years later, it's still the same complaints.
Exactly.
So that's something for us to to worry about. And of course, remembering that President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, when St. Peter's also won the World Heavyweight Boxing Champion.
Yes.
He was a guest, of Umaru Yar'Adua. We hope that Anthony Joshua will also have a photo op with President Muhammadu Buhari, even though their categories aren't exactly the same.
President has already congratulated.
Yes. Okay, Bayer TV would like to thank you for being around.
Too.
See you tomorrow. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, our focus will be on the new National Security Strategy document.
They swore an oath to serve our fatherland and defend the people that traded their freedom, comfortable homes, and mortgaged their lives on the battleground for our unity and peaceful living. These are the great, fearless, loyal, and committed Nigerian armed forces who risked their lives courageously to safeguard our borders. But in the line of duty, many never returned. Nigerians, arise, let's celebrate our fallen heroes. Put on the remembrance emblem with pride to support the incapacitated and families of our fallen heroes.
It is indeed befitting to honor the memory of the gallant hearts of men who paid the supreme sacrifice to keep the country.
President Muhammadu Buhari enjoins all ministries, parastatals, religious and corporate bodies to donate generously to the Emblem Appeal Launch. Send your donations to these accounts. Account name, Emblem Appeal Launch. Account number 393-200-7526. EcoBank Nigeria PLC.
Meet the dreamer. Meet the stylish. Meet the bold. Meet the inquisitive. Meet the warrior. Meet the master. Meet the realist. The challenge is coming. Unity Challenge. Power, development, and peace. Coming soon.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, before we invite our guests to discuss the new National Security Strategy document, let's listen to this background report by our correspondent.
For more than a decade or so, Nigeria has witnessed an unprecedented degree of security challenges in different parts of the country, ranging from kidnappings to terrorism, banditry, amongst others. These security challenges, when put together, impinge on the security of lives and properties of both Nigerian citizens and foreigners living or even trying to invest in the country. While the Buhari administration has made significant progress in tackling sundry security challenges, it became imperative to formulate fresh strategies to deal with them going forward. President Muhammadu Buhari recently unveiled the 2019 National Security Strategy to tackle the myriad of security challenges across the country. While it aims to achieve a safer and more secure nation, President Buhari maintains that the new roadmap is a product of elaborate discussions between all security organs and ministries, departments, and agencies of the government.
Security is a bottom-to-top operation. Failure at any level leads to serious lapse in overall security. The task that now lies before us is the execution of the strategy and the achievement of a safer and more secure nation.
The National Security Advisor, Babagana Mongunu, also stressed that the safety and well-being of ordinary Nigerians is paramount in the strategy roadmap.
This is a shift from the state-centric orientation we've been used to a new paradigm in which the safety and well-being of the individual citizen is the primary basis for all national security measures.
Now, bearing in mind the challenges of implementing public policies in Nigeria, how does the government hope to achieve the objectives of the strategy roadmap? Also, how holistic and effective will the security strategy roadmap be towards curbing insecurity in Nigeria? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be providing answers to these questions and more shortly.
Thank you very much, Abdulsalam Jibril, for that background. We have guests with us in the studios here, as well as at our Just Network Center. First, let's welcome Major General Ahmed Tijani Jibrin, former Director of Military Intelligence. General Jibrin, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning.
Thank you very much for having me again.
All right. Also here with us in the studios, we would like to welcome Air Commodore Darlington Abdullahi, is Vice President, Alumni Association of the National Defense College. Air Commodore, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Right, and then also here with us in the studios, Kabir Adamu, a security risk management expert and another regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. Kabir, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Pleasure is mine. Good morning.
All right,
all right, and with us too here in Abuja is Dr. Benson Olubo. Dr. Benson Olubo is the Executive Director at Clean Foundation. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kieran.
All right, and joining us all the way from Jos is Temlong, General John Temlong, former National President, Alumni Association of National Defense College. It's a pleasure to have you this morning on the show.
Thank you very much, Kieran. Good morning, Nigeria.
Maybe you can still start with him.
I was just wondering if Temlong doesn't like many titles. We would have heard that he was most recently a governorship candidate in Plateau State. All right, Kira, let's begin the conversation.
General, well, I take it that you watched the background report that we've just shown, and having in mind what took place last Wednesday when the president actually announced to the nation of new strategies for national security in this country. Now, what's your take on this? Is it a move that is needed at present, considering the fact that we've been having security challenges over the years?
Thank you very much, Kieran, and I want to commend NTA for having this program actually emphasize Nigeria on the new National Security Strategy document. I think it's most apt and it's in time because it has been reviewed during the 5-year period that we have, bearing in mind the emerging challenges, security challenges that the country is facing, and in line with the president's policy thrust, which is, I use the acronym ICE, insecurity, corruption, and the economy. And so you must have a strategy that will drive these policy thrust to be able to achieve that. And looking at what is happening around the security sector, you need a comprehensive document and a multi-sectoral approach to be able to counter the challenges that is happening, that is affecting the nation now. Now, the president rightly pointed out that security is a bottom-up approach thing, which means that the role of the citizens in all things must be encapsulated into the document, which I think has been done because they aggregated the views of all the various sectors to come up with this document, which I think is all encompassing. So how will the citizens come into this situation? Because if you go to my village, for instance, now, how does the citizen come into this security architecture to be able to proactively contribute to the sustenance of security in this country? How do they see themselves come up? Who do they report to? Where do they go to? Because security is everybody's business. And if it's everybody's business, then I should be able to have an idea and know how I'm going to be in it. I've always said it is like first aid. Because if you are not able to apply first aid to yourself, the paramedics will only come to move the dead body to the hospital, to the mortuary. So citizens themselves must be involved in this security. The various ministries, departments, and agencies must be involved. And it is all geared towards achieving one national objective, and the objective of what Mr. President comes up to achieve for this country, which are sometimes called ICE strategy, insecurity, corruption, and the economy. So I think the Office of a National Security Advisor has done the correct thing to have reviewed this document this time and to have launched it. What is most important, I think, is implementation. Very often in the past, we have had documents which are very good, but the implementation strategy has been a problem because Nigerians they always don't want change. They want to do things the usual things because this is the way we have been doing it. Sometimes we like the ad hoc way of doing things because it promotes corruption. And if this government is out to fight corruption, then we must do things properly, the way in line with international best practices. So I believe that this document, if properly implemented, and then it holds the population sensitized right down to the lowest level of how they fit into the national security architecture, the better for us in this country, and that we will achieve more and gain more from the purpose of launching this document. So I want to commend NTA for actually coming up with this novel program, and to commend the Office of the National Security Advisor too for a job well done. I want to stop here for now to give my other colleagues a chance to contribute. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Thank you very much, General John Temlong, for your opening statements. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's come back now to our Abuja studios. First, let's engage Major General Tijani Jibrin, the former Director of Military Intelligence. Security and defense experts will say, there are three layers in their business: strategy, tactical and operational issues. Now, the last review of the strategy document was 5 years ago, when we have seen a lot change in terms of the landscape of security challenges in the country. So what we are seeing now, is it timely or dated?
Well, I also want to thank the NTA for creating this program, because this document is not a new document per se. Right from 2000, during Obasanjo's regime, there was the grand strategy on national security. It was reviewed in 2014 with the National Security Strategy 2014, and then that 2014 document was reviewed to give birth to the 2019 National Strategy on National Security. So this background is very necessary for people to know that it is an ongoing thing, but we must sensitize the public to know that the National Security Strategy contains policies and strategy of government, which it uses to protect, promote, and project the core national values in the face of internal and external aggressions. And this document is not going to be utilized alone. There are other documents that give expression or expands what has been stated in the National Security Strategy. This document includes the National Defense Policy, the National Strategy on Counterterrorism, the National Policy on Public Safety and Security, the Cyber Security Policy and Strategy, and then the Economic Recovery and Growth Plans. These other important documents will be used pari passu with the national security strategies, so that each of the ministries, departments, and agencies that are involved will clearly know their role. The 2014 document was very compact, and most of the issues discussed were broadly categorized. But the 2019 document is more elaborate, because the issues, especially in the area of the response of government, are highly compartmentalized to make it much easier for ministries and departments and agencies to know where they can key in. It is very important, because if security is everybody's business, then all the stakeholders must know what is expected of them. So this review is timely, and you agree with me that from 2014 to 2019, we see the resurgence of banditry activities. We see upsurge in kidnapping and cybercrime. We also witness the resurgence of the farmers and pastoralists clash. So these issues have become serious in our national domain, that even without the national security strategy, there is need for government to focus on them. So the review is very timely, and I sincerely believe that there is new resolve in trying to deal with these problems, because a lot of structures have been put in place to ensure that all the aspects of our national security concerns are dealt with accordingly, so that there will be no areas of gaps. Again, we have to also look at some other areas, and these areas are the areas that may need to be incorporated. They may need to be incorporated in the implementation of the documents, which we may discuss in the course of this program.
Okay. Now, let's bring in Commodore Darlington Abdullahi, who is from the Office of the National Security Advisor, and he also participated in the drafting of the strategy that we are discussing this morning. One would like to ask, what are the new impulses? We've had a security architecture over the years. We've had policies on security in this country, which of course have been implemented to a reasonable extent. Now, what is new? Yes, you understandably, as Tam Longton said earlier, that there are new wave of criminal activities in the country, banditry, kidnapping, and what have you. So what are those new impulses, that made up the elements, of this very document we're talking about?
Thank you very much. Let me quickly state that I'm not from the Office of the National Security Advisor, but I was part of the team that worked on this document, and I was privileged really to be part of that team. Looking at the 2014 documents and the challenges, security challenges we face now, it was very clear that so many things were left, were not included in that 2014 document. New challenges had come up, and it became necessary to review with a view to addressing those new formulate strategies to address those new challenges that came up. Let me first of all look at the issue of fake news and hate speech. That's a very, very serious issue. If you saw what happened in Rwanda, you will know that this is not something to be joked with. So this was reviewed, looked at seriously, and some strategies were formulated to address the issue of fake news, so that we will not get to that level where it will become a major threat to the country, as you're already saying. Another aspect of the review that took place was the issue of ungoverned spaces in our country. We have had there's so much talk about ungoverned spaces, ineffective governance at the local level, local government level and all that, and therefore the terrorists and insurgents took advantage of that to occupy territories, and this is already being addressed. And from the efforts being made so far, well, we could say that they've been largely, this issue has been largely sorted, largely sorted, although what we now have is a situation in which most of the terrorists and so on are now widely spread out within the nation, and which makes it a bit more complex and require new strategies as well to be able to address them, the way it has come out. You realize the issue of Sambisa Forest and how it was held for a very long time, and so on and so forth. And then this also, there is also this aspect of porous borders, that has always been a source of major concern to this country. Talking about the influx of illicit weapons, coming in and from various countries, particularly those ones looted from the armories of other countries, moving in freely. Terrorists move in and out freely out of the country, and then serious economic issues that are already being addressed now. I mean, people will talk about the issue of border closure and so on and so forth, but those are temporary measures meant to address specific issues, because when a security situation gets to a point where it becomes maybe difficult to manage, then you must take serious measures to address those challenges, and that has been another aspect of this. Then you look at the issue of economic, the economy, which happens to be one of the key areas the government has been looking at, realizing that the Vision 2020 comes to an end in this year, as well as the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, so 2020, we thought it necessary to look at it seriously with a view to enhancing continuity, and that is why I think the ERGP 2040 is being worked on at the moment. The Minister of Finance and Economic Planning did say something about this recently, that they have the ERGP 2040 is being worked on, even though some people contemplated 2050, but I think they have zeroed in on 2040. This will address a lot of the economic issues that affect Nigerians. We must realize that we now have a largely youth population as well. And then leading to what we call the youth bulge. This is also serious, particularly when it's stated that maybe about 65% of the youth of this nation are largely unemployed. And these are issues that must be addressed seriously. And so it was properly stated in the NSS 2019 document that was recently launched by Mr. President. And of course, Mr. President, in his forward, made very clear statements about his own policy direction, how he wants, and himself and his administration, how he wants things done. So these were then expatiated in chapters 2 and 3 of the document in terms of the policies now, before the strategies came later in chapters 4 to 7 to address the threats, the view to achieving those policy statements that were clearly stated.
All right, thank you very much there, Commodore Darlington Abdullahi, for the further insights into the strategy document. And let's bring in Kabir Adam. Kabir, let me, of course, remind you and our viewers, two of the key or core points you often make on Good Morning Nigeria relate to one, security philosophy, and second, strategy. Here we are, a revised version of the National Security Strategy document. Are you happy? Very happy.
Starting from the nexus that was an attempt to create a nexus between human security or economic security, as it were, with national security. And the president in his report emphasized that point. The National Security Advisor also emphasized that point. And then when you go through the document with a tooth comb, as it were, you would see that attempt, emphasize the word attempt. The reason is we were in dire circumstances, dire economic circumstances, and that has built a lot of resentment, if I use that language loosely, between the citizens, as it were, on the one hand, and the government. He has mentioned the huge unemployment rate that we have in the country, the number of youths, some would say about 40 million. I think Clean Foundation will probably speak better on that, who are unemployed at the moment and are frankly angry, and pool of resources that can be recruited by all the insecurity components we have in the country, terrorism, banditry, name them. economic challenges that abound. Unemployment is one of them. So that attempt by this document to create that nexus, and not only that, to bring forward measures on how to take care of those challenges that I've mentioned, I think it's a very good development. Of course, in previous appearances, they have mentioned how our past, especially our military past, is affecting some of the policy documents that we produce. And unfortunately, in this document too, I've seen an indication of that. I've tried to analyze the document along three lines. The consultation process that was involved in creating the document, the stakeholder engagement, and then the most important one, which I hope we'll talk about in the course of the discussion, the results and implementation framework for that document. Unfortunately, I've seen some gaps here and there. The intention, I would say, is very, very good. I would like to emphasize this point by both the president. Remember, he came to us on the tripod of three things, and one of them is security. And so this 2019 national security strategy, I think, is the bat of the president's philosophy as far as security is concerned. It is the responsibility of starting from the National Security Advisor and then all the other heads of government to ensure that that document is implemented. But what worries me is I've looked at the 2014 document and I've asked myself, in terms of the results and implementation framework, what were the loopholes, the gaps that led us to as it were, fail? And I use this word loosely. We have an emergent threat of banditry and associated kidnapping. Have we addressed the reasons why that failed? Mr. President, in his noble way, has severally mentioned how he believes communities should own up to security, as it were. And that aspect is stated clearly in the document, how he believes we need to understand, communities need to understand security better, and it's only when they understand security better that they can now contribute to security. So I've looked through that document. So going...
What has been made clear here this morning is the fact that there is urgent need for us to rejig the security apparatus of Nigeria, and of course come up with a document that is so inclusive, that the new trends in criminal activities can be addressed. And what should be the role of all Nigerians, towards the implementation of this? We have never lacked when it comes to the issue of articulating very, excellent, if you like, document. But implementation has always been, the cog, in the progress of certain policies that have been articulated in this country. And now, we have all spoken globally about this, new document by the president. Where do we go from the document? What is the role of Nigerians? How can this be implemented? You are interested in security matters. You have done analysis over time on this. This is a new strategy, and how can it work?
Thank you, Kirian. I also want to join very distinguished retired military officers and Kabir to say that I've also glanced. I've not combed like Kabir has done. I've glanced at the document. It looks like a well-written document. The problem I see, like some of we've also pointed out, is that of implementation, and thank you for that question. But I want to roll back a little to point out some of the things I also see as challenges. One is that the document is scarce, unfortunately. So it's not readily available. It should be readily available because we are talking about national security strategy. Every Nigerian should have access to this document. And it makes a clear introduction in terms of different interesting statistics. It confirms that we have about 201 million Nigerians, the population currently. It also confirms that the unemployment rate is about 23%. And that we have about 70 million youths, which is a huge one. If you compare it, and if you compare it, then that means that about 35% of this population is actually made up of youths. And then you have 23% of unemployment. So it gives you an idea that there is already a problem in terms of demographics and also the issue of insecurity. One of the problems I didn't see, one of the things I didn't see in that document is the nexus between how did we fare in 2014, the 2014 National Security Strategy,
what were the successes, what were the failures, what were the wins, and how does it reflect in the new strategy? Is not there. Probably as you read it, you will see some mentions, but I was expecting that there should have been a summary or a review of what had happened with the 2014 National Security Strategy and how do we move forward. And I also agree with Kabir. I didn't see, how do we measure impact? And I guess that's the question you were asking me. How do we measure success in terms of the National Security Strategy? It's not really clearly written, as in what is success. One critical issue in Nigeria that we have today, and we have to really address, is the issue of unemployment. It's a big issue, and I want to say that it's one of the key drivers of other related security threats that we are having in Nigeria. So the document has laid out the way government intends to tackle it, but I think Nigerians should also own the document. It's there, it's now there, even though I want to say it's a little scarce, but it should actually be mass produced. And also it should be in languages that people will understand, because currently it's written in a Chinese English language. But we know people, a lot of people don't speak English in Nigeria. So we should have the Pidgin English style, we should have in other local languages. So that, and then there should be this sensitization. National Orientation Agency should have opportunity of taking this to the grassroots. The National Human Rights Commission, other government ministries, agencies, and departments, they all have responsibilities. Civil society organizations, there is need for stakeholders meeting to actually look at this document holistically and ask ourselves, where did we fail in the 2014 National Security Strategy, and how do we ensure that this new document that was just brought into existence few days ago meets the yearnings of Nigerians. And one thing that we have to agree, even in terms of election security architecture generally, is that there is need for kinetic and non-kinetic means of dealing with these issues. And I think even the Nigerian Armed Forces has also come to the realization that kinetic means of securing the country has not worked. And therefore, there's also a need for a carrot and stick approach in dealing with insurgency, in dealing with violent extremism, and also ensuring that Nigerians have a say, even as we continue. Let me give you an instance. In 2014, we did a research on security and governance in the Northeast. The key result of that research is that one of the key contributors of the Boko Haram conflict is lack of governance. It's lack of governance. So that tells you, and that brings up what Air Commodore Abdullahi said, ungoverned spaces. We have so many ungoverned spaces in Nigeria. We have so much porous border, and then the infiltration of small arms and light weapons that is readily available. It is possible for you to leave this place and go and get an AK-47 at little or no cost in Nigeria. And even though the Nigerian police force and other security agencies have done this mop-up of arms, you still see that Nigeria is awash with illegal weapons. And once it enters into the wrong hands, it's a problem. So I think the document is good, but there is a need actually for us to do a soul searching. Why did the 2014 strategy not address the issues? And how come that more issues have actually come up between 2014 and 2019? And then how do we ensure impact? What is a success story? And I think when we look at those issues, that is when we will begin to analyze and agree that this is what we mean when we say a strategy has succeeded or has failed. All right. Thank you very much, Benson. I'm tempted to return to Air Commodore Darlington Abdullahi. Give us a sense of what, the much that you can say on air with regard to the review of the 2014 strategy document and what lessons emerged from that to now form the fulcrum of the 2019 document.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you look at the preface written by the National Security Advisor, I think it tried to do a bit of assessment of what happened, what transpired from 2014 to 2019 when the review took place. And a key aspect of it was the implementation, which he has talked so much about. And that is why Actually, there is an implementation strategy that is not made public. The implementation strategy that was drawn along with the document is available in the Office of the National Security Advisor. It's something that will be quietly driven. The MDAs will have a lot of work to do because of the human security aspect of our national security, the human security aspect. They have a major role to play, and the fact is that we will now have to, they would have to take a look at their sectorial policies and then ensure that immediate review of their policies commences with the view to keen into the issues raised in the 2019 edition of the National Security Policy. So that the review of the sectorial policies will bring to the fore the need for them to quickly understand what the administration is driving at, how to achieve the objectives of this National Security Strategy 2019. There is also the aspect of the all-citizen approach, which was also clearly mentioned in the aspect of implementation, because it's not an issue for the armed forces or security agencies alone. We all have roles to play, and this was emphasized on in the document as well. All government approach with the MDAs playing their roles, and then the all citizen approach with the individuals also having to play major roles in the implementation of this document. So the implementation aspect will begin to roll out gradually. The digitization, which we're doing here today, is part of the implementation strategy. Very soon, there will be stakeholders meetings at various locations where this document will continue to be discussed with various key stakeholders, as well as how they could go about implementing it. So these are issues that have been adequately taken care of. So implementation this time around is not going to be as it was previously, because there is a well laid out strategy to implement the National Security Strategy 2019, and with a view to realizing its objectives. Yes, thank you very much.
Well, gentlemen, you have all spoken well about this document, and we have all realized that implementation is where we have to go if we're going to achieve the objective for which the document was originally put in place. Now let's return to JAS, to General Temlong. Now, intelligence gathering, sophisticated technological approach have all been what other nations are doing, because what's obtained in Nigeria presently with respect to the new wave of crimes in the country is also felt in other parts of the world, and there should be specific method of addressing this apart from the documents that we have. Now, one of our guests now did say that the 2014 the document on security was not properly evaluated to appreciate whether we did well or didn't do well. Now we have a current one going on. What you, with your military background, give us an idea of what implementation should be with respect to the agencies of government saddled with the responsibility to defend and protect the nation.
For us, when it comes to the implementation strategy, is discipline. Very often, ministries, departments, and agencies do not holistically key into what some of these policies that government come on, the strategies that come up. They look at it as if it's a national security or an ONSA document, but it is a document for Nigeria. And so whether you are in the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, and the rest, you should be guided by this document because it is for the overall security of this country. And as the going says, if you are not secure, there is nothing else is important, because it will be useless. If there is no security, there will be no development. If there is no security, human beings will not even move freely because you can't even measure it. So the important thing is that discipline And there should be a performance yardstick in the implementation strategy to find out how the various ministries and departments and agencies are keying in. The state governments have a very crucial role too in implementing this, and up to the local government levels. Now, you talked about technology, and which is very important because technology has actually been a multiplier in terms of human efforts to deploy security personnel. So what a drone or what a surveillance camera can do for you is what probably 100 people that you deploy on the streets to do for you. So I think we must key into technology seriously and bring in the human people and get the citizens organized. Because the important thing is that human security is quite important. So you must get the citizens and sensitize them and teach them, because you cannot give what you do not have. So if our citizens do not have knowledge on how to observe certain security threats, they will not be able to report. Now the important issue is that there are so many documents that have been in place. I remember the Alumni Association of the National Defense College had held a national security seminar on where we addressed the issue of ungoverned spaces in this country. And in that document, the forest guards that it were came up with because they were involved. Because there are supposed to be forest guards, there are supposed to be park guards and the rest. They complain of a lack of skill of service. They complain of the numbers that they were not available. They complain about the inadequacy of the equipment in able to protect or patrol the reserve, and then the ability to even confront some of these people that go in there. We even talked about the possibility of our youth who are no more adventurous, because it is adventurous youth of the West that conquered the whole world, that are able to come up to Africa, to discover America, to discover Australia, New Zealand. It was youth, it wasn't old men. Today our youth are sitting down every time watching TV, watching Arsenal and Man U playing there, or on their cell phones. They don't go hiking, they don't go out adventure, so they don't even know their environment. So the environment, they are afraid of the environment, so they have not been able to conquer the environment. And so that's how you have bad guys who move from one country to another, come and settle in our forest area, build, train, and then launch operations against us. So these are areas that we talked about. And then we even addressed the issue of youth bulge and the implication for national security. But you see, the problem of Nigeria, as someone rightly pointed out, is that if you want to hide any information from Nigerians, publish them, because they will not read them. So I think in implementing this, we must, as they said, they have come up with a strategy, it must be structured. It must go right down to the local levels. It must involve the traditional rulers. It must involve the youth and community leaders. It must involve all the NGOs, CSOs, and the rest, so that we can now have a performance yardstick and be able to measure how have we implemented this situation. It's not usually possible for a review team to come out and write to you how the document has failed or how it has implemented. No, all these are aggregated during their review. It's not all that they have done that is coming out in the policy, because if they do that, it will come about 1,000 pages. So you now reduce all the policy aspects, or what the strategy aspects, what the ways, means, and ends that you want to achieve, that you reduce them into a policy paper. But the rest of them are already there in the ONSA's office, which can be used for those who want to implement, to refer to them and use them as it were. But definitely, we need to have a structured way of implementing, starting from the top or from bottom up. And it has to go from zone to zone, ministries, local governments, states, and communities. So we need to have stakeholders involved in all the places, and it has to be continuous, because the human nature is that when you say you come and do and implement a association strategy in Abuja for the beginning of this year, then you don't do it again. People will just go and pack them and sleep, because the Nigerians are too used to routine. They don't want to think strategic. They don't want to see the future and see how it is evolving. They always get involved with routine. And that's why you find out that even our budget process, even our governance issues are so bogged down with routine. We're not strategic. We're not forward-looking. So we definitely need to address these issues holistically and get all the MDAs to come out. And it's going to be not supposed to be low-level staff that we send there for the implementation. No, you need high-level staff that can be able to take decisions on behalf of their ministries and departments and agencies. And the National Orientation Agency must be so much equipped and funded to do what MAMSA used to do. Because you see, in those days, when you go to villages, you see what MAMSA was doing. Today, they are understaffed. I don't think they are well funded to the extent that they can perform what MAMSA used to perform. MAMSA performed magic. And that's why at the state in this country, everybody knew what government was doing. Government policies were going on. The country became integrated to the extent that what we saw in Georgia during the convention of the SDP, we threw out a Muslim ticket, which was not heard of, which was not even thought of before. But I believe that once the National Orientation Agency and other agencies of government are well funded and they key into it and they implement this document with discipline, and people are held to performance yardstick, people are made to account for what they're doing, and there are no sacred cows, that make sure that everybody is involved, and you implement it along with other documents that have been said. The National Defense Policy fill in a lot of the gaps that are observable here by Kabiru and the rest. The National Defense Policy fill in a lot of these gaps, and once you implement them together with cyber security policy and all whatnot, it will become a holistic document. It will become something holistic. The country will be able to be more secure, a country that will be the citizens will feel a sense of security, will tackle this idea of kidnapping. In fact, towards Christmas now, people are so scared. There's an absence of kidnapping, absence of burglary, absence of banditry, and the rest. Yesterday, I read on social media that the Lokoja road was stopped. People were just being kidnapped and stopped on the road and being robbed. Raided Lokoja Abuja road. So that's the thing now, because the highways now towards Christmas, a lot of movement. And so people feel very insecure. I believe that with this document and with the implementation strategy going on, and for us to do it with a lot of discipline, which we knew when the president, when he was a military head, he brought the war against indiscipline. We must do something with some discipline in this country. I thank you very much for this opportunity.
All right, thank you very much, General Johnson Long, there for your comments. Now, let's return to General Ahmed Jibrin. Taking off from where you stopped, we're already going to get into implementation and what the issues might be. But I would like you to also take it along with your response. We are seeing this strategy document launched by the president. Some persons will say even the optics should be some source of concern. It was at the Aso Villa Chambers, where you have the Federal Executive Council meeting taking place. And from what we know, subnational entities, national rulers, and cascading it down to be sure that at the end of the day, all relevant MDAs and stakeholders have a buy-in and are then champions of the new strategy document. What do you think?
Yes, on the issue of implementation, which is a very, very important aspect of the whole thing, that's where I talk about the need to have lead agencies, because this national security document is a very elaborate document, and there are other documents I mentioned earlier which help in the implementation. So you have to have lead agencies that will take care of some aspects. Let's take, for instance, the National Counter-Terrorist Strategy. National Counter-Terrorist Strategy, there is a center of counter-terrorism at the ONSA, that is the National Office of the National Security Advisor. This Center for Counter-Terrorism is a department, but for implementation purposes, this center needs to be made to become a national center for counter-terrorism, as obtained in other places. It's doing very well now. It's being felt here and there, but if it becomes a national center for counterterrorism, it will now have the powers to coordinate the activities of other counterterrorist units in the other agencies. Police have their own counterterrorist unit. The Army has, the Air Force has, the Navy has, the SSS, the NIA, all of them have their counterterrorist unit. So if everybody is working on his own, there will be no standards and there will be a lot of duplication. So if this center is elevated to a level of national counterterrorist center and structured and expanded to perform the supervisory role, then you will begin to see a lot of changes in terms of the implementation, because it will be held responsible for implementing that aspect, which is the national counterterrorist strategy. There is need for that center to have an intelligence fusion center purposely made for collection and dissemination of intelligence, where the other agencies will be made to key into. Still on the issue of the lead agency, the cybercrime policy and strategy. Who are we going to hold responsible for its implementation? Because it's a very important part of the national security strategy. So if, for instance, you say Ministry of Communication should be the lead agency, Ministry of Communication may not do it. It may appoint one of its parastatals to take care of this. This lead agency in this aspect will be able to monitor the activities of other cyber crimes outfits belonging to other security agencies. So that way you will find out that when it comes to implementation, you have who to hold responsible, whether things are going on fine or things are not going on fine. Then again, still in the Office of the National Security Advisor, there is the Joint Intelligence Board. All these agencies and ministries mentioned in the strategic document are all attending a monthly meeting in the Office of the National Security Advisor. When I was there, I was a member of that Joint Intelligence Board. It's a very, very important forum where all the people that matters, national security meet monthly. Another area where implementation could be measured, where instruction could be given. So if we have that aspect, then we now look at the other aspect of the national defense policy. The national defense policy, its implementation is mainly handled by the defense headquarters under the supervision of the ministry. So they are supposed to be responsible for implementing every bit of the national defense policy in collaboration with other security agencies. I have some observation with regard to some of the way we conduct our joint operations in the country. For instance, in my opinion, I believe that in the spirit of what is called joint operation, we should be able to look again and review how we conduct joint operations. For instance, the Operation Lafia Dole, the Northeast, initially it started as a joint task force. And some obvious joint task force cannot handle that type of situation. And it's fizzled out, and then we have army formations created to handle the problem which brought these 7 divisions and other divisions in place. So task force arrangement, joint task force is supposed to handle ad hoc issues, things that are not likely to prolong. But when things become prolonged, there must be need to review it and allow the formation that have been created to take care of the responsibilities there. The Operation Safe Haven in Plateau State, we all agree that it has spent almost a decade. It has been there. It's no longer ad hoc. The problems that the Operation Safe Haven is handling, they now become part and parcel of the problems of Plateau State, and then it's now part and parcel of the problems of the 3 divisions. So why don't we allow 3 divisions to handle that? We can disband the task force and allow an enhanced brigade to handle that aspect of national security in the country. So it comes directly under the GOC treaty and under the direction of the Chief of Army Staff, who is the operation officer to handle that. Defense headquarters is not structured to handle that type of prolonged type of operation. We are having the Delta Safe. The Delta Safe used to be Operation Polo Shield, and if you look at it, the problems that are there are not temporary problems, are not ad hoc. All the maritime issues, the bunkering, sea piracy, and all of them are permanent in that area. So its task force should not be what should handle it. So we should not have Delta as a task force under the HQ. It should be a task force under the Navy command there. The problems are largely maritime. So when you allow the Chief of Naval Staff to handle that, so all the services in the spirit of, in the interest or spirit of joint services, all the other security agencies can contribute to it. So you will now have a more deliberate arrangement. You now have institutional memory. Their training can be geared towards dealing with such problems. But when you have a task force is meant to perform for some time and fizzle out. We have Operation Hadrin Daji in the northwest in Zamfara. That one is not long. And then we have the stroke in Benue. It's also not long. So we hope that it will not be allowed to inherit what Operation Safe Haven inherited. It should be fizzled out and allow the army formation, because these operations are largely land operations. Okay. So in the spirit of joint operation, the services that need to assist can contribute, but let the formations that are preponderant in those areas handle it, because it's very important aspect of implementation, because you easily know who to now deal with when you're trying to find out what went wrong.
Interagency collaboration. I think we've gotten a very good analysis of what implementation should be like on land and sea, coming from a professional. We appreciate that.
We haven't heard from Kabir Adam.
We're good at
he earlier put us on notice.
We don't bring him in. But for now, gentlemen, maybe we should adopt the homeland security policy of US, which they brought into play in the aftermath of 9/11. Very comprehensive. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of NTA. We'll be right back in a moment.
I'm Deputy Comptroller of Customs, Joseph Atta, the spokesman for the joint security exercise. Over a period of time, I had through indifference or deliberate non-compliance to the ECOWAS protocol on transit of goods by our neighbors, the Nigerian Customs Service had to raise this issue. MOUs were signed severally. They were broken as soon as they were signed. We've seized over 32,050 kg of rice, and that's a huge impact. And then the fact that the coming in of this foreign rice has been completely shut down. We've gone out, we've received testimonies of farmers who, before now, found it difficult to sell one truck in a market. These people say it now that those who could sell one can now sell up to 20 trucks.
To the disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say, I go to do them again, because change begins with me.
Cross the other side of the road. I will no longer endanger my life crossing express. Instead, I will use the bridge, because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now. Calm down. I be one time faster they go.
Make they stop anyhow for road. They cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go they stop for the right bus stop, because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and the program is Good Morning Nigeria, and we are actually trying to dissect what came out from the presidency last week with respect to security strategies best for the country, because of course the trends of criminality have taken over the environment, and we have to deal with that. Now let's go to Kabir. Kabir, you've listened to the generals here, Tamlung Jos, and of course Tijani here. Let's hear from you.
I mentioned in my opening remarks that most of the policies that we're reviewing unfortunately have some element of our military legacy, and I would say some of the contributions contributions from my co-discussants also reflect that I'm of the opinion that military involvement in internal security should be reduced. And unfortunately, in the national security strategy, I haven't seen enough of that. And I would strongly recommend that we find a way to enhance the capacity and capability of our police to handle internal security matters. The national security strategy spoke about basically three things: Nigeria's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and then of course the protection of lives and property. Of course, tied around all of those things are our national interest. Clearly, the military is better suited for territorial integrity. In terms of internal security operations, the other civilian security departments, such as with the lead agency being the police, should handle that. And that, for me, should be our focus from 1999 to perhaps 2024, when the next review will be, or 2023 as the case. If we continue along the line and continue giving excuses for the police, then in 2023, 2024, we'll still look back and say the military is heavily involved in national security issues. So I'm a bit worried about that, and I hope that as part of the review process during the implementation strategy, that will be taken care of extensively. Intelligence, that question came up, and it's been mentioned severally, but I also expect that the kind of engagement of the public that we do during the implementation strategies mentioned by Commodore Darlington, that public will understand enough of this strategy to give their contribution to the national security strategy. Because if, as a citizen, I believe that document is meant to protect my life and property, then maybe I would contribute better to it. And I think that is where the onus worries. I'm a bit concerned with the body language of the National Security Advisor. You recall in his opening remarks, he talked about Almajiri system, which virtually everybody here agrees that system is no longer tenable. But if you want to change culture, you have to make the owner of that culture understand why you want to change that. If you grandstand and give the indication that, quote unquote, that culture is, as it were, wrong. Yes, it's wrong. But how do you make the owner of that culture understand that it is wrong? It's not by abusing what he's doing. It's by explaining to him why that culture is no longer tenable. So that's perhaps, I think, the kind of language that I would expect going forward. Bring in the stakeholders. I mentioned in my opening remarks stakeholder engagement and the consultation process. So we need to see more of it. Then the role of the National Assembly. The implementation strategy, I am very glad to hear that there is an implementation strategy. But let's look at the US. How did they go about this? When Trump came in, he released a national security strategy. And he stated clearly in that document that America first is what he intends to achieve. And what did he do? He sent it to the Congress. Because remember, budget rules and passage process is handled by the National Assembly. So unfortunately, yes, the National Assembly was invited when launching the document, but what of in the consultation process as well as the results and implementation framework? How well has the executive arm of government engaged the National Assembly? Those are areas that improvement can be done going forward.
All right, Kabir Adabo, thank you very much there for your perspective. Let's bring in again Benson Olugbo. Benson, one of the segment of the question I posed to General Tijani had to do with getting the buy-in of multiple stakeholders in this. It's understandable that our focus has been virtually on the federal government, but at the sub-national levels, which has also been a focus for us on Good Morning Nigeria, we see this strategy document is virtually managing the political economy of Nigeria, with the security component and the critical aspect relating to communication. Now, if it is said that MDAs will have to revise or review their sectoral policies, MDAs at the federal level or MDAs at the state level, every state government or every governor has a blueprint. Now, what is the sync between that blueprint and what we are seeing now emerging from the National Security Strategy document, plus ancillary policy, defense, on public safety, as well as cyber security?
I think a problem that the national security strategy is going to face is ownership. And that is actually
one of the problems we have in Nigeria. So one thing I hope it doesn't happen is that people will wake up and say, it's the National Security Advisor program. They should run with it. Unfortunately, that's what happens. We did a stakeholders meeting on interagency collaboration. And a general came and clearly stated that one of the problems we have in Nigeria is not that we don't have good laws, but is lack of synergy between our security agencies and even government agencies. There is this problem of where we are not involved, then therefore we are not going to be involved in the implementation. And it causes a lot of problems. And I hope it doesn't happen. Because if you also look at the Prevention of Terrorism Act, it's also the problem that law has had in terms of coordination. There have been questions as to who should be the right coordinating channel in terms of Prevention of Terrorism Act in Nigeria. Of course, the law says the Office of the National Security Advisor. But people will ask you, is it recognized by the Constitution? Which is a big question. And that brings up the issue of the Office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, and then other agencies and departments and all those things that are already recognized by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So that issue of ownership becomes a big, is that we have military deployments in the 36 states of the Federation. And what that means is that originally the provision of the Constitution is that the role of the military is to protect our territorial integrity, to aid civilian agencies in internal security. But the reverse is now the case, that you have more of the military engaged in internal security. The argument has always been that some of the security threats are beyond the police and all those things. But for how long would that continue to be? So that brings up the issue of ownership. The question now is, how will the different government agencies, security agencies, ensure that they all have buy-in and ownership of this strategic document? Because it's for Nigeria, like Kebbi rightly pointed out, what is the role of the National Assembly? Because the law clearly says that the National Assembly has to make law in terms of the political policy. So it can actually come up that in terms of implementation, the National Assembly will say, we are not carried along. Therefore, if issues of releasing money is involved, then they need to come back again and start the process again. So you understand. But this is, the president has put his mark on it. So it should be an executive thing. But I think we should go beyond the executive and also ask ourselves, how do we carry the state governments along? How do we carry the local governments along? How do we carry the market women? How is it that the market women will look at this document and say, it is what should help me, I should contribute my own? Because I don't think it's only of government policy. I don't think we should look at it is from the government, therefore we should accept it. I think it's also something that ordinary Nigerians should have ownership. Ordinary Nigerians should understand, and ordinary Nigerians should contribute. So for me, ownership is key, coordination is key. And then the fact that we actually need to explain to people in languages that will understand that this national security will help us. It's a good document, like I said, but it also has its own challenges, because we need to emphasize the need for civil-military relations that ensures that the Nigerian police force and other civilian agencies have that role to play in terms of internal security. I think it's something we should be looking at.
All right, that's indeed interesting. You have raised the point of people being territorial, lack of, collaboration among agencies. That has also not, done us well as a nation in all sectors. It's not just in security matters. You're talking about ownership. You're talking about who drives the policy. In this, we have actually been able to raise many perspectives to this conversation that are germane to the implementation of the new security strategy. Let's return to Commandant Abdullahi. You wanted to make some clarifications on some of the issues raised. What are those clarifications?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I think it's necessary to state that the national security strategy is a document of the federal government and not that of the office of the NSC. Yeah, they may have, initiated the move and driven it, but it's a government national document. That's one. And also, it clearly recognizes the fact that local government systems were created to bring governance down to the lowest level, to the people, and that aspect was well recognized in this document, and also some strategies were formulated. And the issue of lead agencies, which is also key to ensuring that the seamless operation is. If you look at the national counterterrorism strategy, the second half of that entire second half of the national counterterrorism strategy focuses on lead agencies, assigned roles to various MDAs and all that. Those are areas that we're talking about the implementation that was not properly driven, and efforts are now being made to ensure that the MDAs key into these documents. Look at the National Security Strategy 2019, the National Counterterrorism Strategy that assigned roles to various agencies and all that, so that you know where you have to play a key role, in bringing about peace and security and enhancing development in the nation. So those are areas that the sensitization will focus on, and this actually starts from the 16th of this month, December, and it will kickstart the major sensitization drive across the nation, starting, of course, in Abuja, and then it will go down to various
just
areas.
Tell us something. What was the level of engagement of the subnational entities in this, and then how do you hope to cascade it down to them?
The committee composed of people from various sectors of the economy. There were military officers and there were non-military officers from various MDAs and so on, from the presidency and other. It was a large committee that.
We're talking about state governments.
State governments. Yes. Yes. State governments may not have been present at the formulation venue, but there was a request sent across the nation for inputs, and these inputs came from various sectors of the. So the committee started by looking at the inputs from all this, including state governments, and there were inputs. And so these inputs, of course, when we bring everybody together, it will be difficult to manage this.
How do you ensure that state governments will key into this strategy?
This will be done. That's why we're talking about this strategy, like the MDAs and all that. We'll take it also to the states and ensuring that the local governments also have a role to play in this. So I believe that.
Commodore Darlington, this is a very significant national document, and the comments and views that you have all expressed here are very significant. Sensitization is starting on the 16th of December. What is emerged from our conversation, and what we do know is that communication is a key aspect of this. When we say that, okay, reduce this to a document that the market woman can understand, doesn't mean that of the bigger issues will be there. So what is the role that is assigned to you? How do you communicate to the key stakeholders? I wouldn't know how many communicators you have on your committee or that the implementers would have, but sometimes we can get things wrong when the communication isn't right. MAMSA worked very well. NOAA at the beginning also worked very well on account of the fact that they handled communication very well. Just for us to indicate two things very quickly as we're wrapping up now. We have made reference again to ungoverned spaces. On Good Morning Nigeria some months ago, if not sometime last year, we had discussed the issue of ungoverned spaces. But considering the points that have been raised in today's conversation, General Temlong and the other guests, Darlington, Commodore Kabir and Benson Olubo, it might be relevant for us to return to that. General Temlong was talking about why is it that our youth do not have that sense of adventure to discover these so-called ungoverned spaces and then fish out who the foreigners and potential bad guys just might be.
But it must not be the youth that will do that. When we talk about ungoverned spaces, ungoverned spaces because of the inability of government to govern the places by way of perhaps either you have an infrastructure there that's operational where the youth can key in, or that you have a monitoring mechanism. Like we're talking about technology. You cannot, no nation can monitor all the territories with that technology. That is number one. It is not humanly possible. So if you are always keeping away from technology issues, we will return to because the world is developing.
All right. Abir, very quickly.
I will quickly mention that in the 2019 National Security Strategy, that issue is mentioned clearly, and technology has been quote-unquote recommended as ways to surveillance in the ungoverned spaces, and they were clear, or it was clear, in mentioning the border areas, because ungoverned spaces in border areas, and then the forested parts of Nigeria. So I think it's a good step. It's been mentioned. But, and it's very important to mention this, the use of unmanned aerial surveillance vehicles. Not too long ago, a president was almost killed by the use of a UAV, a drone, what we call a drone. I'm not too comfortable that the document has not recommended the development of a policy on UAVs. UAVs have their threats and they are also assets.
Yeah.
So we need
flights have been disrupted at Dubai International Airport, for instance.
Aspect of that.
That's right.
It's very important because in the document it is clearly mentioned that the drones are becoming a threat in the space. And in the space management, both the Air Force and all the stakeholders were instructed to ensure safety because of the presence of these drones.
All right, gentlemen. You know, in the course of our conversation, as usual, some Nigerians who are interested in this conversation have been reaching us by tweets, and we have a great deal of them here. Omobola House, Sosakibowa, Komala Hajingala, Akiju, Olabaju, Christian Alpha C, Solomon, and Gufan, Jones, Ferrari, Michael, Ibrahim Modu Aji, and Professor Khalifa Dekwa. So this note that we conclude this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Not before we appreciate our guests.
All right. I would like to thank all our guests who have been with us in the course of this conversation. First, let's thank Major General Ahmed Tijani Jibrin, former Director of Military Intelligence. General, thanks a lot for being with us on the conversation.
Thank you very much.
We also would like to thank Air Commodore Dalin Abdullahi, Vice President of the Alumni Association of the National Defense College.
Always my pleasure.
Thanks for being with us. From Jos, we were joined by General John Temong, himself also President of the Alumni Association of the National Defense College. Thanks a lot for being with us, General, and also for your insights. Here in Abuja studios, Kabiru Adamu, a security risk management expert. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. Benson Olugbo, another security analyst and executive director of Claim Foundation. Thanks a lot for your contributions.
Thank you.
All right, let's go over to our sports desk.